Pussy is whipping the sky.
Speaking of that, is Bad for Good next? What's next?
Bad for Good is not next. Next up on the list, we have Stark Raven Love.
Stark Raven Love. I like this one too.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so, Steve Edwards, are you familiar with the song Holding Out for a Hero from the Footloose soundtrack and from Shrek 2?
No.
Okay, so the main piano hook of this song was later reused in like the mid-'80s and then became a massive, massive hit, one of Jim Steinman's biggest hits. And so this is one of the best examples of Jim Steinman being totally okay with reusing his like piano lines or melodies and reworking a song until it's successful in the zeitgeist. And then even after that being like, fuck it, I'm putting it in my vampire musical. So, like, zero fucks given by Jim Steinman about reusing his songs. You know, once again, lending credence to the idea that he views his entire life as one giant musical.
There's a reason Jim Steinman doesn't co-write with anyone is because anytime he'd co-write, he'd be like, okay, I need to be credited as modern Jim Steinman and also 1978 Jim Steinman, who I plagiarized from.
But also, Holding Out for a Hero does have a co-write with the credits.
Oh, man.
Actually, I'm going to... Real quick, before we get into this song, because it's on my mind with Bonnie Tyler, one of my favorite Jim Steinman's recycling of songs is he wrote the original theme song, like Hulk Hogan's entrance music before Real American, and then just turned it into like a really catchy Bonnie Tyler pop song. But the entire time I listen to it, I'm just thinking about Hulk Hogan, like, doing the leg slam on somebody.
I'm always thinking about Hulk Hogan.
Always think about Hulk Hogan.
Which song is that? I didn't know that.
Ravishing is Hulk Hogan's theme song.
Okay, I gotta check that out.
Yeah, you'll be like, what? There's a Hulk Hogan cartoon show from the 80s that uses that as the theme song.
I didn't know that.
And so you're just like,
With Bonnie Tyler vocals, or?
Well, no, just like the original Hulk Hogan instrumental.
Vocals.
And they just chant,
instrumental,
Hulk,
okay.
Hulk, Hulk throughout the song. It's pretty tremendous.
One day when Mike is on his deathbed, he will be like, please, bring me the Paul Stanley version of Surf's Up and play some Hulk Hogan leg slams on the screen.
I've heard some of Randy Savage's music. Does that count?
Oh, man, Randy Savage, his rap, phenomenal.
Dude, all about Hulk Hogan, just shit talking him.
I've only ever heard his work with DJ Cumberbund.
Okay, I don't know what that's, but I don't think that's supposed to be a joke, maybe?
He's a mashup artist.
Okay.
Yeah, every
Every
mashup
song
he does,
samples.
he sticks in a Randy Macho Man Savage sample, which is admirable and great for humanity. Anyway,
well, I want to talk about Stark Raving Love for a second because I have to use the restroom.
All right,
so I'm gonna spit out my words on it.
All right.
I wrote down that I felt like this has one of the more solid vocal hooks, and that it's the second best rock song on the record, I think. That just maybe Bad for Good was just perhaps just a little bit of a better song overall. But I also wrote down I could hear Meatloaf for sure singing this one, so it's interesting that you said
Meatloaf hates this song and refused to cover it.
Oh, really? Interesting. This was the one out of everything I was like, oh, yeah, this is a Meatloaf song.
No, Meatloaf has said, like, yeah, that song fucking blows.
Because he's probably like, this sounds too much like something I would do. I don't like it.
That's weird.
And I think Jim does fine singing it, but I think the song is just bigger than what he can pull off.
I think this is the one where I think his vocal works the best with the material. Like, it's meshing well. Like, it's a fun, driving rock song, good energy. The fact that it follows Love and Death in an American Guitar, like, it's a really great lead into this track. And the fact that it ends with just a couple minutes of guitar solo, which I didn't realize that, I remember when Mike first heard The Flash, he's like, oh, it's like Greg's combined his influences of Kiss and Jim Steinman into one song. I forgot that Jim Steinman already did the song with the long guitar solo. Like, so he beat me to it, and it's a kick-ass rock song with just weird operatic tendencies, but it's driving, it's catchy, his vocal just fits in very well, and I can see why this would be the first one Mike would show me, because he's like, dude, check out this song, it's sick. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I was gonna ask you, you had brought back that memory for me of me sending this to you through AIM, which is no longer with us, rest in peace. But
it's not.
What?
It's not. It's gone forever.
No, they ended it like 2 years ago. So I think it was December. It's just you can't even sign on anymore.
Ah, shit.
I know.
At least we always have MySpace.
Yes.
At our GeoCities.
Oh, classic. Angel Fire was my thing. Yeah, it is my third favorite song on the album. Although, Greg, I was going to ask you, do you remember, like, were we having a conversation? Like, why did I send you this one in particular? Were we talking about Holding Out for a Hero? And I was like, oh, you think you know that song? Let me show you the original. Or, like, do you remember how that even came up? Or did I just think it was, like, a sick song to show you at the time? Like,
I think you just thought it was a sick song. I think
which it is. I'm just surprised because I would think naturally I would lead with Bad for Good, but
No,
so
I
was just
think
wondering.
well, because you know yourself, where you like sometimes you want to lead with like the deeper cut.
Yeah, especially you and I. We were kind of even at that point. We were definitely like nerding out with music. So
Right, and so
I knew you could handle it. Yeah.
What I think it was, you sent me the song like, this is a really cool song, and I think what I remember from the conversation, like you said something like, I think I hear a little bit of Holding Out for a Hero in this. He might have borrowed the hook for the song, but I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, because like
I hear you
knew
like the
song.
Shrek 2 soundtrack, but check this
I knew
out.
this song like years before, and then like I think like one time I heard like Holding Out for a Hero like at the supermarket or something. I was like, say what now? That's Stark Raven Love, yet not. What's going on? You know, and like I wasn't specifically aware of the connection or whatever. Like, I guess I wasn't as internet savvy back then, where I would just quickly look up like, who produced Holding Out for a Hero. Oh, Jim Steinman. That makes sense. For some reason, I was like still going the long way about things, where I'd like go to the library and see if it was an encyclopedia somewhere. I am kidding, of course, but yeah. I guess now we just have smartphones and every answer is instant. But back then, you kind of had to wonder, like, what was that song I heard at the grocery store today that reminded me of another song?
Well, based on the context just of this podcast, you could have just assumed what you were hearing was Jim Steinman and be correct.
Yeah, I mean, he's everywhere, man.
So, Victor, what did you think of this one? I mean, obviously, I shouted its praises. What were your thoughts on it?
So I'm a big fan. This was my number one up until my third listen, at which point it became my number two. And I only docked it because I don't think it quite... the thing that makes it work is the intro of Love and Death and an American Guitar. And I think without that, it's maybe slightly lesser, but it's still kind of great. And it is also sort of in the same category, like in terms of the premise of the song being the combination of two things rather than just an expression, like Dance in My Pants or Stark Raving Love. They're combinations of things rather than just being the straight up like thing that you would know them as, which is there's a song that I can't believe still hasn't been mentioned yet that is coming up that is the thing that I don't like version of that. But Stark Raving Love is awesome and intense.
And, touching on its placement in the album, perfectly placed. If you're looking at this album as a single listening experience, you had Lost Boys and Golden Girls, and then Love and Death and an American Guitar breaking up the tracks before you get into Stark Raven Love. And so there's enough space between the two where when they go into the bridge where they just start singing Lost Boys and Golden Girls, but instead of a ballad, it's driving, it's pounding, they're clapping, and you get to hear Jim take on that, and his voice works with that melody in a rock setting. And so it's interesting having that callback, making the album feel like a cohesive experience, and also adding to the whole Jim Steinman's life is one big musical. Let me borrow this motif and put it here in this different setting. And it works in the different settings that you put it in.
And dueling guitar solos.
Oh yeah, just ripping guitar solos at the end. I mean, this is a really great rock track, and I think the thing is, it's the one that it almost stands out the most because it stands out the least, where it's just like, here's just a very solid Steinman rock song, but it's completely successful in what it sets out to do.
That's a very good way of putting it.
But yeah, absolutely adore it. And Mike, thank you for introducing me to this song and my favorite album. So thanks for that, buddy.
Is he back yet?
I'm back. Why, are we waiting to go to the next one?
No,
Okay.
Steve was the...
No, sorry, I was really left him hanging. Yeah,
Turned
no,
into a dog again.
I'm honored as well as like shit. Yeah, like I feel like you owe me a little bit more than you've given me. I don't know.
Money.
Like it's nice that you finally got me on these podcasts, but like I feel like I am I in the liner notes of either Lipstick like album? Like I feel like I am
All of
like a
them.
huge influence of your.
You know what? You need to be Lipstick 3. We're making it happen.
I'm just kidding, but I mean I should be, but yeah.
So, Jamie's notes on this track. Well, that intro was recycled for Bonnie Tyler's Holding Out for a Hero, wasn't it? Yep. I knew I loved the intro and the familiarity. Stellar backing vocal arrangements here. Yeah, those are definitely a highlight of the track. Again, it seems to suit Steinman's voice that much more. Love the return to the intros after the chorus / before the verse. Love the production scream on the Banshee line that land left to right too. Masterstroke of milking and arrangement. This could be my favorite so far. I just love the semitone intervals for the harmonies heard on the love line. Guitar trade-offs during the outro only improve the song. So, yeah, overall praise. So, Steve Edwards, I assume you hate this kind of music in general.
No, I don't hate it. No, it's just so long but I don't hate it at all.
And Steve, did we get your comments on this one?
I don't remember, but I do know that my favorite version of this song is probably the rewrite that he did with Snake Vomit.
Oh god.
Which one was that?
Shark Raping Love.
Oh!
Inside jokes.
That is a deep inside joke.
It's true.
Yeah, no one's gonna get.
I do like the song a lot. I've had this one, 4, I think. Just like it's a great driving rock song. Lots of nice oohs and ahs and things like that. This is definitely a solid song. If I were to have to trim this album down to a 5-song full length, this would definitely be on it.
I mean, that's high praise coming from Steve. Also, a 5-song, full, because it's not an EP, it's still just an album.
No, I was doing some quick math on it, and if you took any given 5 songs off this album, it would be about 35 minutes long. You'd have to work really hard to pull
the real
an EP
question
out of this.
is, who are we getting to cover it? I say Kraftwerk.
You know what? I approve. Yeah. Can anyone think of someone better to... You know what? My Chemical Romance.
Oh, yes.
Dude, that would be awesome.
Oh, my God, yes.
I'd be really into that.
Yeah, they'd actually probably do a really good job.
Yeah, no, actually, My Chemical Romance covering Steinman would be amazing, because they would just emo everything up.
That would be really good.
I would be not even a little bit surprised if somebody who was an expert on MCR was like, oh yeah, no, they totally did cover him. They did such and such song live,
Yeah, but as an expert on Steinman, if MCR covered Steinman, don't you think I'd be all over that shit?
I think I would have heard if MCR did it too, though. I like MCR a lot.
So, any other comments on Stark Raving Love before we move on?
I mean, you could probably just make it a nice little jingle for a dry cleaning commercial. Starch Raving Love.
Oh! All right, so we're at the number 2 song on the album.
Stark Raving Love should have been in Iron Man.
And Game of Thrones.
I do like
Yeah.
All the Starks.
Left in the Stark again.
See, I thought we were talking about Iron Man, in which case the, cast iron, the next song is probably more appropriate.
Oh, yeah.
Next up on the list, we have Out of the Frying Pan and Into the Fire. So, this is a musical deep cut that probably no one, aside from Steve Smith, might know. This reminds me a lot of a Michael Stanley song that was released a few months prior to the album.
Oh, snap.
But I think it's more just coincidence. There's only so many notes, and just the general musical zeitgeist. Sometimes stuff comes out around the same time that has a similar hook. The Michael Stanley song, He Can't Love You, has a similar hook, similar production style, at least similar, opening guitar hook. The rest of the song is pretty different. But I think the fact that the guitar tone is similar, because they were both doing kind of heartland rock stuff around the same time, makes the songs very similar in my book. Both are great. But, man, another phenomenal Jim Steinman song. Just great build, different moving parts. I love some of the syncopation on the drums, the piano lines. I especially love the piano line in the chorus. Just super, super catchy. I love the way that the gang vocals come in and where Jim's voice fits into the vocals, where like it's a little bit pitchy, but also kind of awesome. And
where Jim's voice fits, mostly buried by better vocalists.
yeah, but like it really works in that section. And it's just one of the coolest vocal spots on the album. Just it's a very unique vocal sound, and it like because he's not the perfect vocalist, it gives it some grit, it gives it some edge, and I don't know. Just once again, great lyrics. I saw you like a summer dream, and you're the answer to every prayer that I ever said. Like, you know, it's romantic, but also like I am so freaking horny, and so it just works on those multiple levels. But like, you know, it's never been this hot, and I've never been so bored, and breathing is just no fun anymore. Just like, dude, this is you know, my boredom has outshined the sun.
I mean, yes, in that like it's vaguely deep sounding gibberish. I'm pretty sure. Like, I don't think any of those lyrics actually mean anything, but they do sound pretty
angst.
cool.
It's angst that it's hot, you're bored, and you're not having sex. And what you should be doing is having sex. It's a great tune. I love it. I will admit the title has never really done it for me.
Well, that's the one that's. Yeah, I mean, that's most flagrantly just a standard cliche.
It is a standard cliche, and the thing is...
Yeah, that's what I don't like about it.
The thing is, the song is so epic that it deserves a better song title, because I'm just thinking about, like, oh shit, I'm gonna cook some eggs, I'm hungry, when I think of the title. But when I just think of the hooks and the melody and all the different musical choices, I think it's phenomenal. And I would say this is one of the ones where it's neck and neck between the Meatloaf version and this version. Most of the times I prefer this version, but the Meatloaf version is very, very good and very, very close.
So based off of my personality, guess what my first note on this song is?
I hate cliches.
I hate the title of the song so much so that I can't even hardly listen to it. Like, it's so terrible. But and this was the first song where I was really like, oh my god, the first few lines of this sound like one of the dudes from South Park is singing it, and and I was really surprised when I looked in the credits and saw that Jim Steinman was singing, because I was like, well, I'm curious who this vocalist is, this South Park dude, and I wanted to see. I had no idea. I thought he was just a songwriter. So when I saw he does some of the vocals, I was somewhat impressed. I was like, oh, he can sing, but at the same time, I see why he gets Meatloaf over these other guys, because he has these grandiose ideas that he can't live up to, and then he gets very emotive and expressive, and then he sounds like kind of a character of himself. So that works against the song, but mostly the song title is just terrible. So we have to rank this one toward the bottom, even though it ended up being number 2 for me. Right. This was very, very low.
Yeah, see, no, I like it. I have it at number 4. I agree that this is one where the original and the Meatloaf version are both really good. I get what you guys are saying about the title. It's kind of just a straight up cliche, but also going along with the whole Jim Steinman teenage sexual angst, like, it works. Like, he wants to take his chick out of the frying pan that is like the hot beach and take her into the fire of the bedroom, baby. So I get it. It works.
Surf is up.
The surf is up, and so am I.
Also, another great lyric adding to the gothic atmosphere. And all around the city, you see the walking wounded and the living dead, which, like, one, kind of implies zombies. So bringing that back from earlier, Jim Steinman made zombies work in his songs. But also, you know, there's an idea of, you know, once you get to a certain age, losing your passion in life. The walking wounded are those who have been hurt and jaded by life, and the living dead are people who are just, you know, mindlessly going to their jobs with no passion for anything in their life, and just like not having that excitement and thrill for something more. And this song is saying, there is more to life. My penis.
Well, and that one too is just like another classic example of like Jim Steinman, like hilarious yet like effective vocal delivery. Where just like living dead, like, you know, just, yeah, I like it.
But like it's so fascinating that these are like very corny, silly ideas, but I can get completely emotionally invested in it. Like, when I watch Dragon Ball, I know that show is dumb, but I'm like, man, Gohan, you better kill Cell, you better do it! Like, I feel the intensity, I feel the sincerity. Watching Cobra, Sylvester Stallone, ridiculous movie, but I do sincerely get invested. And so, yes, is this ridiculous? Of course it is. But I am invested in it, and I love it. Let's see what Jamie has to say about this track. He says, opening riff sounds ahead of its time to me. It's the kind of thing hair metal bands would be doing 6 years later. Another blatantly Meatloaf track in the way the dynamics move from the intro to the verse. Great Driver, another song I was aware of due to its placement on Bat 2. Steinman's limitations are really obvious when he digs for grit or power in the higher parts of his register. A phenomenal song, but not as good when done by Jim. Love the "you're only killing time and it will kill you right back" line. That is a great line that I forgot to mention, so thank you, Jamie. This is probably the best song on the album, but let down by the vocal. And I would say of the Jim rock songs, this one probably has the weakest vocal overall, despite having my favorite vocal part of any of the Jim rock songs. Just like that gang chorus sounds really freaking cool. Like, I dig the hell out of that gang chorus.
Well, Greg, I've been wondering this whole time too, like, how much did you cream your pants when you heard Gene Simmons reference this song on Burn Bitch Burn?
It's one of the reasons why that song ranked so high for me on Animalize.
Yeah, I never listened to that podcast, but that's funny.
Basically, that song it said was so bad it's good, was my justification of that song, where I was just so tickled pink by the song and entertained that I had to rank it somewhat high. We're not as high as any of the Paul songs from that album, but like, it's the fact that he was like, thought that "I'm gonna put my log in your fireplace" was a good lyric. Oh,
it was that one.
Yeah, burn bitch burn.
I forgot that line.
That is pretty good.
So
I'm gonna put my meatloaf in your fire.
So Victor, aside from not liking the cliche, how do you feel about the track?
I think the track is really solid, and based on the that who was it that did the line a couple of seconds ago to the impression, which was amazing, by the way.
That was I think Steve.
Living Dead.
Might have been Mike.
Living Dead. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Based on that, David Byrne has to cover this one.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
But yeah, this song is really solid, and I think the problem is I just don't like kind of the overall, like, the cliche of it. I don't like that, but the rest of it is solid. It's really well, like, performed, I guess. It's otherwise great.
And, I could say that's one of the things that held me back a little from it initially, where I fell in love with the hooks and the melody and the arrangement and the playing and everything was great. But I'm like, man, like, I'm hungry now. I want to cook some eggs.
So is this just one of those situations where we all had it kind of in the middle, but because we didn't agree on anything above or below it, it just ended up higher? Or did a lot of people have it really high?
You and other Steve put it in the middle. Everyone else put it top 3.
Okay.
Oh, no, sorry. Mike has it top 4.
I had it 4, yeah, but top 4, yeah.
Okay.
I had it at number 1.
Oh, wow.
It's a good song.
Number 1?
Yep.
It does
Oh
bang.
my gosh.
I'll give you that.
I have a lot more patience for dumb
okay.
cliches,
Yeah,
especially when they're like just chained together in such an incoherent way as this song does it. Just like, none of the lyrics make any sense. So the fact that some of them are real world cliches that people use doesn't even matter. The words I used in my notes were vaguely inspiring gibberish.
Yeah, well, when it's more than one cliche, it starts to be like, you didn't write this song, you sort of made a collage.
You mean like how
and I don't
Gene
like
Simmons
that as
wrote
much because
a bunch of songs
so many
like
of the
that?
other lyrics are so inventive.
Yeah, I can see that, but I think just like, lines like "walking wounded" and "the living dead," like, that's really creative. Like, there are some really awesome, clever lines in the song that are exciting. "You're only killing time and it'll kill you right back."
I do like that line, but it's just not as good as "oh jeez."
That's true.
I love that.
But so, Steve, this is your favorite song on that. What makes the song shine in particular above the others?
I mean, it's good, solid rocking song. I don't mind the lyrics. I'm happy to ignore them. Got a good melody. It's got really good production with I think this is one of the prime examples of Steinman using better vocalists to supplement his own voice and like stack up a bunch of nice falsetto harmonies and things like that to cover for the fact that he's hitting some mid-range note that isn't super important, but there's a bunch of other people to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah, and I think they really succeed on this track, and I think this album in particular is really Jim Steinman coming into his own sonically and really defining what the Jim Steinman sound is. Because if you compare it to Bat Out of Hell, that one has a lot more Bruce Springsteen-isms, is a lot more traditional Heartland rock, just the songs are really long, versus this one really, goes deep into the opera side of things in terms of the arrangement and the lushness of it, and he basically keeps that for the rest of his career. And so Bat Out of Hell, in many ways, is a weird outlier in comparison, where it is much more Americana, but then also coincidentally much more successful. So it's probably why Americans were able to get into it, because they didn't realize it was a joke. They're just like, I take this completely seriously. Paradise by the dashboard light, going by the lake with my girl.
I'm gonna go die in a motorcycle accident.
Yeah.
But I'll be drinking a lot more than he admitted to.
But so this song in many ways really encapsulates the Steinman sound and just the lushness of the production and what he would do for the rest of his career. And it's a really, you can hear, elements of, Todd Rundgren's production throughout, but this is Jim really carving a niche for himself as Jim Steinman and not just a Todd Rundgren side project. This is him really defining his sound in song form very successfully.
So you could say it's like Jim Steinman presents the music of Jim Steinman.
Yes. Extra long and redundant.
I.e. Jim Steinman.
Yeah.
Jim Steinman presents Jim Steinman in The Music of Jim Steinman by Jim Steinman.
Starring Jim Steinman as Jim Steinman, with special guests
Rory Dodd as Jim Steinman.
Also,
sounds
Carla
about right.
DeVito as Jim Steinman. Jim
As I
Steinman
said,
as Carla DeVito,
read.
just wearing a wig.
I mean,
She should read Love and Death and American Guitar.
I mean, she would do great, and I will tell you, she is a super fun person to talk to. Total sweetheart, super nice, just absolute, just all around, awesome human being. And to tie in Beauty and the Beast from earlier when you were mentioning the I'd Do Anything for Love video, she's married to Robbie Benson, who played the Beast in the Disney animated film Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, he played.
So just tying all the worlds together.
Very cool.
But so we are at the number one song on the album, so I'm going to go through the ranking from the bottom to the top. Love and Death and an American Guitar.
Boo.
Left in the Dark. Lost Boys and Golden Girls. The Storm. Surf's Up. Dance in My Pants. Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through. Stark Raven Love. Out of the Frying Pan and Into the Fire, and the melody of Burn Bitch Burn was in my head at that part, so thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
But the best song on Jim Steinman's Bad for Good, my favorite album, according to this panel of experts, and Steve Edwards.
Yeah.
Oh! The title track, Bad for Good, my favorite song off my favorite album. I didn't rig the votes. I actually thought about rigging the votes to make this happen, but I didn't need to. So thank you, everyone, for math, just making this end up there.
Thank you to math.
Yeah, really, I want to thank math most of all. Thank you for numbers, the number 8. How many of these songs are 8 minutes long?
Well, I think that was the thing. Maybe the records, maybe for me, because this was my number one, the record just sabotaged itself. Because I listened to the first song, I was like, okay, yeah, this is way better than I thought. And then I just kept going and kept going. I was like, okay.
But you put this as your number 2. You put Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through as the number 1.
I was wrong then. Whatever, it's close, same thing. Yeah, I like this one. this one, yeah. And so I had no idea who was singing. I didn't know this was Jim Steinman, and I listened to it. I was like, oh yeah, this sounds like Meatloaf singing. It's just not as solid of a pitch and not as beefy of a tone, but everything sounded the same. And what's interesting is I'm curious if you guys will agree with me here, because some of you don't listen to the same kind of music I listen to, but it felt like I heard the beginnings of like the Irish punk, like Dropkick Murphys kind of sound within. There's a certain part in the song within the beginning.
I hear that.
And
I think he has kind of like a new wavy vocalist kind of sound.
Yeah, well, yeah, just like the song in general. It just within a couple minutes into it sounded like it turned into kind of like an Irish punk thing, like the like a little bit of semblance of that.
So that answers the obvious question that comes later: is Flatfoot 56 should cover it?
I don't know Flatfoot 56
because they're the Christian Irish punk band.
Hell yeah! Now we're talking.
And
just picture like the sea is whipping the sky. The sky is whipping the sea.
That's awesome.
I would listen to that.
All
actually.
these Steinman covers are sounding like they'd be amazing.
Just like a big old gang chorus of like drunken Irishmen. You're gonna make a bad for God.
So it was doing that a few minutes in, and I was kind of immediately surprised by the fact that it was so. I knew this song was going to be really long because I'm listening to it digitally, so I could see the time on it. But I was surprised by how fast paced and urgent it sounded. Like it didn't come across like it was going to be like over 6 minutes long, because within the first couple minutes it's like, oh, it's moving along. It's like a fast rock song, but then the feel changes and it slows down, which is actually pretty cool here, where it changes the tempo, and then it changes the tempo, but the melody doesn't change too much, so it still feels like the same song, but going into a different movement. And the melody, though, to me, doesn't seem like it's that much of a focal point. It seems like it's more important within this song to like get the lyrics out. And like, I've got a lot of things I want to say, and let me just spit those out as much as I can. It's got that fast-paced delivery kind of deal to it.
Yeah, I mean,
that's not a bad thing. That's pretty cool.
It's an energetic, kick-ass rock song in a weird genre that solely is occupied by Jim Steinman and people who play his songs.
I definitely agree about the length of it. I mean, if you look at the length, it's in the 8 minutes, actually closer to 9 minutes. So that looks like a chunky time of song. But really, I think it goes by like, it feels like maybe 5 minutes, like a little bit longer than an average song. But I think the song moves along. I absolutely love it. So I never feel like bogged down by any one part of it or anything like that. I love every little piece of it.
Yeah, so Jamie's notes on this song, he says, straight away I can hear what I know to be Steinman-esque, basing this off my enjoyment of Bad Out of Hell 1 and 2. The vocals sound like a less powerful Meatloaf, down to the accent and phrasing. I wonder how much influence Steinman's songwriting demos were on Meatloaf's development as an artist. This is a great song. Arrangement is superb. Todd Rundgren's production is superb as per usual. The sound effect sounds super displaced. Very much like Dokken, though, there seems to be a disconnect between the vocalist and music. This is the first time I've heard a comparison to Dokken. Also, I would love Sammy Hagar to cover this song. I think he would just make this a party anthem. Reading that this was intended to be a Meatloaf album that never happened, I can give that a pass here. For reference, I listened to the Meatloaf version from Bat Out of Hell 3. Straight away, you can hear just how much of an improvement Meatloaf's vocal would have been, though you can also hear just how much better suited Todd Rundgren's production is. Sorry, Desmond, I love you more when you're focusing on writing. Referencing Desmond Child producing Bat Out of Hell 3. So, those are Jamie's thoughts on this track. Mike, it felt like you had a little bit more to say and we cut you off. Or did we not cut you off?
No, I didn't feel cut off. I was just more of like that was my chapter 1. Or that was like my prologue, you know?
That's your prologue.
Yeah. No, I was figured I could have a lot more to say, but we'd kind of just go back and forth or whatever. Yeah, I was disappointed with the Bad Out of Hell 3 version. Just like, Meatloaf is considered the better singer, and like Brian May is on it and everything. So I remember when it was coming out, I was like, oh, I love that song. This could be a really cool version. And it doesn't suck, but like, I just feel like I have no need to listen to it when I have the original. Whereas, like, both versions of Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through, I would want to, like, be able to listen to those, like, multiple times throughout the rest of my life. But if you told me I would never hear the Meatloaf version of Bad for Good ever again, I could live with that.
So here, I'll give you a weird thing. I heard the Meatloaf version before I heard the Jim Steinman version.
Okay, so I hope you were blown away by the Jim Steinman version.
I absolutely was. When I first heard the Meatloaf version, I thought, wow, this sounds just like something from Bat Out of Hell. This is so cool. This is a classic song that I've never heard before. I loved Brian May's guitars because it sounded like Queen, but with Meatloaf. So it's like, I love Queen, I love Meatloaf, this is cool. And then I heard the original, I'm like, oh, this crushes the Meatloaf version. It's not even close. Because this one has much more driving energy to it. The Meatloaf version feels like studio hired guns in 2006 doing a very competent job. But this version, it has almost the sense that the band could fall apart at any moment. There's urgency to this recording, and just freaking Max Weinberg, a monster on the drums, just destroying it on this track. And Todd Rundgren's guitars are more energetic, much more fast-paced. I love Brian May. Brian May's my dude. Overall, I prefer him to Todd Rundgren. And, you know, Brian played phenomenal on the track, but what they chose to do arrangement-wise with the guitars was it sucked a little bit of the energy out of the track and made it more like a traditional Bruce Springsteen kind of song, as opposed to just an operatic epic, which is what it was meant to be. I have more that I want to say about it, but I want to, pass the conch shell around. Steve, you disagree with me about which version of the song is better.
Yeah, I also heard the Meatloaf version first, but when I heard the Steinman version, I was like, oh, this just isn't as good. I think Steinman's music works best with that studio polish. Like, I don't listen to Steinman because I want to hear music that's, like, a little bit raw and just about on the edge of falling apart. Like, no, like, that's not what he does. He does super bombastic, big, dumb, massively produced songs, and that's more of what Meatloaf's version is.
But I think I feel more bombast from this version because there's more energy to it. I think the Meatloaf version is good, but doesn't have as much energy and excitement, and therefore feels less bombastic to me personally.
I think Meatloaf's better vocal delivery adds the energy that might be missing from slowing the tempo down a little bit.
But I think there's still plenty of energy to Jim's vocal. Like, it is,
but there's more energy added by Meatloaf's vocal than is taken away by the slowing it down.
I guess that's something Mike and I will have to disagree with you on.
Right? Yeah, I was gonna say I'm
gonna go build my own theme park with blackjack and hookers.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like I said at the beginning of the podcast, where just like my bread and butter of music is I have favorite bands like Kiss, Aerosmith, AC/DC, Van Halen. So not quite Steinman-esque bands, So for me, just like the energy and the sincerity of the original Bad for Good, but meeting that, like you said, like the band sounds like it's about to fall apart. There's just that urgency and a little bit of danger to it or whatever. So it's almost like my favorite style of rock music meets like the pomp and circumstance of a long Steinman-esque song. So that's why I definitely side with the original version. And as far as singing, like I mean, it's fine that Meatloaf sang it, but I wouldn't have on the original album had like Rory sing it or anyone else. It's perfect just with the honesty of Jim singing it, and I feel every part of that, even the parts of his that aren't technically as powerful as a better singer would have done, but I just love every little inflection he does on the song. It's probably my personal favorite Jim Steinman song, and even if someone disagrees with that, I would very much argue that it's as good as any other song he's done with any other artist throughout his entire career. And again, just going back to the whole concept of just like that kid in Kansas, there's just so many lines in this song that resonate with that. And I mean, just even the one that made the front cover, like, I know that I'm going to be like this forever. I'm never going to be what I should. And you think that I'll be bad for just a little while, but I know that I'll be bad for good.
And yes, Mike, that line does resonate with me. So hard.
I actually, not only does it resonate with you, I think it should resonate with anyone who claims to like rock music. And if they don't like the song, that's one thing. If they don't like the melody of how it's sung or his delivery, that's one thing. But if the actual words and content of that line don't resonate with you, I'm not saying you're a bad person, but I'm just saying I don't know if you actually like rock music. No, I mean that's sincerely. If that doesn't connect with you on some level as a rock fan and that feeling, I'm not. Then we just enjoy rock music in very different ways. Because like for me, that connected with. I think that can connect with anyone, like especially younger. Like for me, I was just kind of like an average kid. I wasn't one of the cool guys. Never was. I wasn't like the kid who got beat up and shoved in a locker either. I was just like a guy going through middle school, going through high school. And I just always kind of knew there would be things that were different about me. And I would never be like the most awesome kid or whatever. And like that part of me was just always going to be a little nerdy and like this like nerdy rock music or whatever. And that was just who I was. But I think it could even connect with someone who maybe is like a little more of a traditional badass. Like, yeah, like, you think I'll be bad for just a little while, but I'm bad for good. So like I think almost anyone can relate to that. So that's why I love the universality of that. Like, and that's why I think it should be a staple lyric in any rock fan's collection.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, this is a song that is a lost classic that just should be on classic rock radio. Like, I think this song should be added to the rotation. Should be just a song you hear, like, once or twice a day.
Holy shit.
Oh, yeah, I know. I totally
That is a
agree.
substantial portion of your
Yeah,
day.
I don't have enough time
Well,
for that.
it's all part of this balanced breakfast.
Right. So I want to get
Mandatory
Victor's,
20 minutes of Jim.
right. I want to get Victor's take on it. I still have a lot to say about the song because it's my favorite song and my favorite album.
We have been talking about this album for like 3 hours now, Greg.
I'm so kind of pooped.
I want to hear.
Well, I don't have a lot to say that hasn't already been said. I think it rules. I've never heard the Meatloaf version, but I don't need another version. I think, whatever. I hear a lot of complaints about Jim's vocals throughout this album, both like on the Wikipedia article I read and like even just brought up in this conversation. But I think I'm willing to just like set that aside and call it style rather than a limitation. And I think it fits this song perfectly. And it wasn't my number one, but when I turned on the album for the first time, it was kind of like a wash of relief that I was like, oh, thank God this album's not going to be boring.
And you know what? I think that is a perfect analysis where it might not have the power of Meatloaf, but this definitely has style. Like, this is Jim Steinman succeeding as a frontman. He has charisma with his vocal. He is delivering the lines well and giving you a very unique but satisfying vocal experience. And, if you look at this in the context of Following the Storm, what does it begin with? The sea is whipping the sky is whipping the sea. You can hide away forever from the storm, but you'll never hide away from me. Just immediately building that theatricality, tying the songs together in the opening lines of the song. And this is like, a storm happened, and here I am rising, from the chaos of the storm, and I'm a fucking badass, and I'm here to rock. Like, if that doesn't get your blood boiling and ready to, like, believe in rock and roll for the next 8 minutes and 45 seconds, man, I don't know what will. And,
I wonder what the kid in Kansas thinks about that, having never seen the ocean. Is the sea, like, made of corn? The corn is whipping the sky. The sky is whipping the corn.
Tornadoes.
So obviously that would have to be a Korn cover song, but that's good. My Korn.
Dude, Korn would kill it.
Oh, Korn would absolutely kill the song. But, another set of great lines. You've been living your life like a girl in a cage, and you whisper when I want you to shout. That's, the theme of just like people living their mundane, stuffy, boring lives and just wanting to burst out of it with rock and roll excitement. And I'll never know why you want to go on sleeping when there's nothing left to dream about. That's such an Americana line. We're living in this shit town in Kansas with no economic future. We're probably not going to get anywhere. What's the point of having dreams? And, the idea, why are you going on sleeping when you could be having sex with me? Like,
I think
that's brilliant. That is a brilliant turn of phrase. It is so clever. Like the layers to it. It's a simple line, but there's a lot of layers just in those lines.
I think this song is a more like a better metaphorical and sort of like visceral in terms of how the song is actually put together, a representation of what rock and roll dreams come through says very literally, which I think is fantastic, by the way.
Yeah, and the line, I wasn't built for comfort, I was built for speed. I mean, that is a very Bruce Springsteen line. And just like the idea of just like...
Although putting it in the context of that is definitely a line about sex. You're like, wow, man,
Ugh.
Jim, don't tell on yourself like that.
I don't find that
here's-
to be Bruce Springsteen. Bruce Springsteen is never that much straightforward with like.
No, he's rev up my engines. I mean, come on, he's pretty blatant.
Girl, I'm here for a good time, not for a long time.
But what I'll say, about that line, when he says he wasn't built for comfort, he was built for speed, meaning that he needs to live a life of excitement. He can't just live a mundane, suburban, normal life. He needs to ride out on that motorcycle into the sunset, into the distance, be a rebel forever. And so he's saying in your relationship with her, so you're the girl, and then Jim Steinman's the guy. He's saying, look, I will give you amazing, awesome, hot, fast-paced, passionate sex. Aerodynamic sex. But I can't be, your cuddle buddy. I can't be your, guy to come home to, because that's just not who I am. I'm a nomad. I'm a traveler. I'm a wanderer. I've got the world to explore. And so if you want to have a wild night, if you want things to be exciting, let me hear you say, yeah, yeah, yeah. Spoilers for a Kiss song we'll get to later. But
Or Bruno Mars song.
Right.
I feel like a lot of songs say yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or an REM song.
But it's just, to me, that's a brilliant line, because it's that rock and roll freedom and spirit, that Victor was mentioning, encapsulated in song form. And this was when I was living in Cleveland. This would be a song that one of the songs people would ask me to sing a cappella on the street. This and Bad Out of Hell. I would just be like walking around, and people who knew me like, hey, sing Bad Out of Hell. Okay, now sing that other Jim Steinman song you do. And
were you busking or like what?
No, it would just be like,
They were saying you got tips for that, then I need a cut of those tips. For
Pay me, Greg.
It'd be the kind of thing where like I would, because I did a performance of Bad Out of Hell in high school that went over extremely well. And so I just became known by many people as, oh, Greg, he sings Bad Out of Hell. And that's awesome that he sings Bad Out of Hell. So I became known for singing Jim Steinman songs. And when people who knew me or knew my reputation just came across me in the street, they'd be like, hey, can you just sing Bad Out of Hell? And our buddy Matt Devonshire, who played bass on The Flash, mentioned on a previous podcast that I was like Jim Carrey, the yes man. I can't say no when someone asked me to sing Bad Out of Hell. So I would just burst into Bad Out of Hell or Bad for Good, depending on the request. And yeah, like this is my favorite Jim Steinman song, period. Favorite song from my favorite album, period. This was the easy first place. The rest of the ranking was difficult, but this is easily my favorite song off my favorite album. I adore it so much.
Well, another line I wanted to point out, and it's one that I had in mind ahead of time with this podcast, but then you made me think of it when we were talking about out of the frying pan and into the fire, with that concept of just people get old and then they just kind of like go through life like zombies, and it's like, what's the point of living anymore? And just the whole line in Bad for Good, like for the good of believing in a life after birth. I just think that's a great concept. Like, I feel like so many people die at like such a young age and then physically die like 60 years later or something, and it's just like, what's the point of that? And going back to the sea is whipping the sky is whipping the sea line, that just kind of brought back funny memories for me. Shortly after what's up?
You said the sky is whipping the sea lion?
Poor sea lion.
Sea lion, yeah. The line, Line. I remember back in high school, like shortly after discovering this song, I just thought it was so cool. And I remember sharing that lyric with my friend Jody, who I was talking to a lot at the time. And when I quoted that lyric to her, she was like, yeah, that's gay. And the funny thing is, she's a lesbian. And she just
so she should love it.
She just totally crapped on this line that I loved. And she's just like, Yeah, you listen to really shitty music, man, and I was just broken, but I did not let it ruin the song for me. I did not let her body and soul me like my cousin Brian did to me with Body and Soul, which has no relevance to this podcast really, but
Look, Body and Soul is great. And someone mentioned it sounded like a Meatloaf song, so you're just back on Team Jim Steinman, man. It's all good. All hugs here.
all gravy, baby.
And also, when we were another great line, for the good of one hell of a night. What a rock and roll, I want to get laid sentiment.
And that goes right back to everything you said about, built for, wasn't built for comfort, built for speed, and just the, I'm not going to be your long-term thing. And yeah, I mean, it all just fits together. It's an epic masterpiece. I hate to just call every song I like a masterpiece when that isn't the case, but this definitely is one where it is the case.
I mean, the original premise of this podcast was to try to be positive to sort of counteract the negativity of the internet, and then we went through the Kiss catalog and
way too much Kiss.
Some of these songs you just really can't be positive about. And, we listened to Gish, and you really can't be too positive about this album overall. So, but when just you have a great album and things are great, gush over it, love it, but then also explain why you think it's great, get into the details, really dissect it, and I think that's what we've done here, and I think done pretty well. One thing I didn't touch on, because there's still more to talk about.
Oh my god.
Greg, do you want to do another episode where it's just you gushing about Bad for Good?
I actually did think about that.
Well, I mean, I feel like for the sake of our guests and needing to sleep eventually, we might need to just do that.
Hey, we're on the last song. We're wrapping up. But man, how freaking massive the drum sound is on this album. Just what a killer, epic, in-your-face drum sound. Like, they just sound huge. It's so cool. So, just wanted to comment on that. One of my favorite drum albums. Up there with Creatures of the Night by Kiss, which ultimately, yes, has a better drum production, but man, the pieces on this album sound epic. Do we have any other comments on the song specifically before we move on to the next section of the podcast?
Which is starting from the bottom and doing it again.
Which is
we go from best to least best.
Yeah.
Which is ranking them in
the next section is saying whether or not we were surprised by the ranking, happy with the ranking, and also a large part of the premise is judging me as a human being for saying this is my favorite album of all time, and explaining my psyche with this. So just general comments on me as a human for citing this as my favorite, and your thoughts on the ranking and just overall wrap-up thoughts. So
I mean, I have to be
Mike.
pretty pleased with the final ranking just because the top four songs were also my top four, not in the exact order, but more or less. So that's clearly I understand this album as it was meant to be understood. So that makes me happy. Other than that, the other ones kind of fell where they fell. No Biggie Smalls. In terms of you loving this album, as your favorite album, it's not my favorite album, but I think it's a cool favorite album to have. I don't know any other human being who takes it as their favorite album. So
neither does Jim Steinman.
Yeah, and it's a good album. I probably know more people whose favorite albums are worse than this album than people whose favorite albums are better. You know what I mean? So it's you're in good company even though you're in unique company. It's much like how Jim Steinman's Wagnerian genre is all to his own. So you're the one guy on Bad for Good Island, and I will let you live there, and I will happily visit that island from time to time. And we'll barbecue, and we'll listen to the album, and then I'll sail away to my Crazy Nights Island, which is off the coast of England, and we'll all just be happy,
You'll also visit Bad Company Island, but not Bad Company by Five Finger Death Punch Island. Those guys are weirdos.
But you can't get to Steve's Island because it's the wall, and there's a wall blocking it.
It's true. Nobody's allowed on my island.
Well, I just wouldn't want to visit Steve's Island because I hear there's snake vomit everywhere. And
That is really weird. It's sticky.
But yeah,
entire cows and whatnot.
Right. But I appreciate that take, and it's just thank you so much for introducing me to this album. I would have found it eventually. Because I was slowly
all
becoming
joking
more of a
aside,
fan.
I don't genuinely think you owe me $10 million. I would gladly take a cool 1,000, but I am honored because I remember that now, but I had forgotten that for many years. It's really cool to be able to share music with people like that, and that's literally the entire basis of our online friendship is just like we're guys like in different parts of the country who like the same music. So I am super happy that there is that association on an album that means so much to you.
And also, I think you've got to find it definitely flattering. We're like, you know how sometimes you recommend music to someone and they're just like, oh, I don't care, it doesn't move me.
Ooh, yeah.
Like, you had the most success you could ever have with a person. Like, yeah, you introduced me to my favorite album of all time. Good job, bro. Like,
Yeah, I'll take it.
That's as victorious of a music recommendation as you can give somebody.
It's like a 3-point basket, and you get fouled, and you make the extra free throw. So that is just sweet, sweet, sweet.
So, Victor, I really want to get, because I know you mentioned in our conversation, we were Facebooking each other, and you mentioned how you, based upon listening to our previous podcasts, you know why I love this album, but you didn't tell me the specifics. So I would really want to hear your take on the ranking and that in particular.
The ranking, there was only like, I guess I was expecting everybody to have loved Dance in My Pants. I was wrong as hell about that. I'll admit
I love
it.
Dance in My Pants. That was my number 2 and just barely lost out.
And then I wasn't surprised everybody liked Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through more than me. That was, I guess, Out of the Frying Pan was a little bit of a surprise, but that song does bang, so. And then, because a lot of the things that you bring up throughout the episodes are like, you like hooks, you like when the title of the song is what the song is about.
I do.
I was very specifically thinking
And,
the Smashing Pumpkins.
And this is coming from a guy. I think the episode I was listening to earlier today, I'm only at Dynasty.
Oh, so you still got a ways to go. It's like when I was catching up on Ultimate Final Fantasy. Like, frig, there's a lot of Final Fantasy games.
Yeah, I'm not even close to caught up yet. But I've gleaned this so far, and I imagine you haven't changed much since then, in terms of
in like a year.
things that you like. Yeah. And then the other thing is, having purchased and listened to both Lipstick albums, I heard a lot of that in those as well, just in terms of how you, the way that you're, I guess, the band, because since Steve's here, I'll pretend like he also contributes.
Oh, that is the most
Harsh but true.
He actually contributed a lot to the second album. That's probably why I didn't sell as well.
I read the liner notes and I was like, oh, Steve is doing like half of this.
Yeah, no, he did a lot of the second album. So credit to Steve, but go on. Sorry.
Just a lot of like how the music is composed and then how your melodies play against the chords that are there. It just reminds me a lot of this album. So I don't think that you're lying when you say that you like this one, because I can hear it. I don't think that was.
Sorry, go on.
I was just. I don't think anybody ever thought you were lying about loving this album.
Right,
based
what
on
kind
how
of
long it
sociopath would lie about loving this album?
Someone who wants to be friends with Jim Steinman.
That's true.
And look, I did want to be friends with Jim Steinman. I worked so hard for the Notice Me Senpai. So, like, when he finally said Merle was a good song, I'm like, yes, I did it. Thank you, Senpai.
The funny thing for me is just, and this is kind of niche and whatever, but that's the whole point of this podcast. And obviously, I'm talking to the people who will get it. Whenever we do any of these podcasts, Kiss or this one or whatever, and Greg is talking about a song that he's just digging the hooks and everything, and he keeps talking about hooks, I can't not hear catchy pop hook, so catchy. Like, I can't not hear it that way, and it's really hard for me not to start singing that every time he references hooks in a song.
So, dude, remember that huge Twitter campaign we did for that song? Like, trying to spread that song, make it go viral?
Conan, yeah.
Carla DeVito shared it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
And, like, was super supportive, wrote a really nice message. Like how cool is that? That, you know, someone from your favorite album of all time is, like, stepping up to the plate for you, to support you. Like, I'm gonna, like, teary-eyed just mentioning that. Like, that is so freaking cool. Like, Jim, Rory, and Carla have all been really supportive of me. And so, to me, I do not take for granted how magical it is that 3 key players from my favorite album of all time, 3 people who I, who I didn't even consider meeting. And, granted, all of our interactions have been online, but they've been frequent through the years. Like, that is just... it's to me it's magical that I can call them like friends and people I can just like message and actually get a response as opposed to someone who would just ghost me. I can get Rory Dodd to text me better than some of my former bandmates. And that's just, it's wild to me, but very cool. So let's move on to Steve Edwards.
I forgot what the question was.
Unless Victor had more to say.
No, I am good. I said my piece.
All right.
Oh,
so,
as far as your personal
as far as where you thought the ranking ended up, if you thought the ranking was good, and then
what's wrong with Greg?
What's wrong with Greg?
Oh, there's so much. Where do I? Are we talking about just this record? What's wrong?
Probably, it probably starts with the child abuse. That was probably
what's
the first.
wrong with Greg, as indicated by this record?
By this record,
Right.
well, he likes pants dancing, and I don't know.
I mean, who
no,
doesn't?
the ranking's fine. I've heard it one time within the past 24 hours. Well, not 24 hours anymore, because I feel like we've been here for 7 hours talking about it.
Right.
But
Or one song from Bad for Good.
Heyo.
Ooh. As far as personal, I mean, people like what they like. There's nothing wrong with liking anything. I don't.
But you've done a bunch of podcasts with me, and as we've done more podcasts, you've been like, Greg and I are more similar than I thought.
Yeah.
And then you listen to this, like, oh, maybe we're not that similar.
No, I know you like a lot of 70s style stuff that I'm not into, and
I'm a tad more theatrical.
well, yeah. Well, I guess I like some aspects of theatrical because I actually like musical theater, but it's for me it's more of a length kind of thing. So that's where we differ. You're fine with drawn out longer pieces, and I have a hard time with that. I'm more antsy. I have a shorter attention span for that sort of thing. Like I'm like, okay, this is.
I mean, I'll admit this was an acquired taste.
Steve is saying that he would prefer all of these songs as covered by NoFX.
Yeah, that'd be
Yes.
cool. that actually would be pretty awesome.
This album would be 15 minutes long, and it would be great.
Probably would be. So that's the only difference. I mean, the songs aren't bad. I told you I was surprised by the fact that
Greg
I
liked
liked
something
it as
that
much
isn't
as I
shitty.
did. No, well, I know you're shitty, and all your musical tastes are complete crap. No,
No, I remember that Thin Lizzy episode.
what about it? What did I say?
We were just like, oh, it's so boring.
Oh, it was kind of boring. But this.
I like that you bring up something specifically to enrage yourself, Greg.
Yeah, that was a poor decision.
I remember how you're an asshole. And I'm like, I remember everything. And I'm like, yeah, probably. Can you remind me how I was though? And you're like, oh, you did that. Okay, yeah, that's true. I did that. That's how I felt about that. I haven't listened to that. I think even like by the time I got home, that Thin Lizzy record was off of my library. No offense, but it'll be.
Which Thin Lizzy album? I'm just curious.
It was
one of the good
Jailbreak.
ones.
Jailbreak.
Oh, that Jailbreak's a good one. Okay, I thought maybe it was one of those early ones, and
No,
I'm like,
it's
okay,
not.
I get it, but
And it's not bad. Like it was fine. I just thought I was just bored by part of it. But it's not a bad thing. I'm not one of those people that's gonna ever say music's not good, especially music that's been proven that a lot of people like it, people buy it. It's obviously good. It has merit to it, and you can listen to these songs and you can hear the compositions, and you can't say, oh, that's bad. From just a musical standpoint, it's not bad. Now, with some of the lyrical content, I might be like, that's we could talk about that. But I feel like that's not a situation of the writer isn't good. I think it's more of a taste thing. I'm just not really into the whole some of the more cheesy aspects of like you said, like with the Kiss thing where they're talking about here's my dick and that's cool and appreciate it.
Here's my dick, you're welcome.
Yeah.
So, did you like this better than Jailbreak?
I don't remember Jailbreak well enough to answer that.
Do you remember any of Jailbreak besides the songs
I remember
Jailbreak and The Boys
Jailbreak.
Are Back in Town?
There was one called Warrior. Is that right? Warrior? Warriors.
With an S.
And I think I remember liking that one, but I can't remember what it sounds
You
like.
actually said you didn't like it.
I didn't like that one. That's right. I didn't like that one at all. So no, I don't. So I can't compare. This was cool though. This is I've heard Bat Out of Hell. I've heard some of the Meatloaf stuff, and actually it wasn't that long ago that I listened to the whole Bat Out of Hell album. I don't think I listened to all of it because I was by most of the way through,
the
and I was
fact
like,
that
all
you
right.
independently listened to
I
Jim
did.
Steinman without me prodding you, I
Yeah, I
think
did.
is actually pretty high praise given your taste of wanting short, concise songs, but the quality of Steinman is enough for you to listen to him. That's impressive.
Yeah, and my wife, she was talking about it too. We listened to it on a long drive, and she was talking about how her mom would play that record all the time. And so I was like, okay, well, I've always heard it talked about. I've heard a few of the songs. Let me actually listen to the songs. And the songs are good. Obviously, it's one of the best-selling records. And I feel that way about these songs too. They're good. It's not my personal taste, but that doesn't take any of the merit away from the creativity or artistry of it. And it doesn't say anything about you other than you appreciate more bombastic theatrical pieces. So I don't know what point I was trying to make. I forgot the question.
Just your judgment on
Judgment.
Like
I judge it. It passes.
it passes.
Passes the test. Whatever the test was.
All right, so Steve, you probably know my psyche better than any human, including my wife.
Yeah. And being as such, like, I don't even know where to start with you. But this ranking was, like, there were a lot of things that were really swingy. Like, no single song had a clear consensus. But I think the general trend of the album was everybody seemed to mostly agree on. Other than just, like, everybody had 2 or 3 songs that were massive outliers from their own ranking.
The rockers tended to rank better than the ballads, it looks like.
Yeah, in general.
I genuinely don't even mean this as a brag. I'm just curious. Am I the only one whose top 4 in one order or another is the actual final top 4?
Not me. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
you're the
wasn't even
only
close,
one who
so.
got that.
Mike knows this album better than I do.
Yeah, again, that's not even a brag. That's just kind of cool to me because that might be the first time that's happened on any of these podcasts I've been a part of. So
Right.
I'm a bigger Jim Steinman fan than Kiss fan.
What?
Good that I'm sitting down.
Other Steve and I both got the bottom 2 exactly right.
Oh, yeah.
Nailed it.
High five.
I did the self high five because I can't see you. I've just been like flailing randomly back at you. But no, like, yeah, like, I mean, I think one of the first things that I learned about you, Greg, was that, you know, you were big into the Jim Steinman-esque thing, that I joined Lipstick, and you're like, all right, here's this song Merle that you need to learn, Steve. And I was like, okay, this really sounds like you're going for, like, the Meatloaf Steinman kind of thing. And you're like, yeah, that is exactly it. That's the thing. But with time travel, it's like, okay, all right, yeah, that's cool. Yeah. You're a strange dude, Greg. But, you
cool
know,
thing to me about
we
Merle-
probably wouldn't be friends if you weren't.
Aww.
I've always dug Merle just because it's like a total Steinman-esque song, and then it also just kind of reminds me of Pictures of Lily by The Who, just in terms of the premise, like falling in love with this woman who's like been dead for years.
Yeah, and the other Steinman connection to that, it's written about Merle Oberon, the actress from the 1939 version of Wuthering Heights.
Honestly, I did not know that.
Jim's favorite book, and interesting about that song, not to go on even longer, but that was one of the few songs where I didn't conceptualize the song before I wrote it. Most of the time when I write a song, I decide what I want the song to be before I ever touch a guitar or a piano. So I'll say I want it to be about 4 minutes long, with this kind of tempo, this kind of riff, with this lyrical theme, with this kind of hook. And I do all of that, and I tend to write in my head before I touch an instrument. And then Merle was a song that just kind of flowed out of me naturally. And when I started writing it, I thought to myself, this could be an epic, or it might just be like a short pop song. I'm not going to force it to be an epic, and I'm not going to force it to be a short pop song. I'm going to let the song decide what it wants to be. And then when I finished writing it, I'm like, oh, I have like an 8-minute song. I guess I should add some piano and female backing vocals to this. And that's just it. So it wasn't intended to be a Steinman-esque song, but it just naturally came out of me that way. And so that's my story on that. So do you guys think we talked about Bad for Good enough?
I mean, it's only been like 3.5 hours.
Yeah, it's
Chapter 1. It's Chapter 1.
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1. Chapter 2 is...
Well, we'll take a break, but before we break, let's do some let's do some plugs. You know what? Let's start with our newest guest, Victor. Where can people find you on the internet? What do you want to plug and promote?
Hi. So, I am at the Victastic K on Twitter. My avatar is Neo from the Matrix. And if you would like to listen to my music, it is I go by James Gameboy. I have all my original stuff on Spotify, and I have all that and more available for free or pay if you want on Bandcamp under just search James Gameboy on Bandcamp. And I also have a Patreon, which is just patreon.com/James Gameboy. And I've got probably at least 2 albums that are going to come out this summer.
Right on, dude. That's sweet. Like a lot of bands, like, oh, we'll do one album every 5 years, which, admittedly, we struggle with. That's lipstick, and it's super annoying, and I hate that that's what we become. But look, you can't win them all, kids. But I appreciate you have the balls to be like, fuck it, 2 albums in the summer.
Thanks for talking over the applause drop, Greg.
Well, I got a...
There we go.
There we go. Well, I was talking over the quiet drop because we needed something big and bombastic for our guest, Steve.
That's fair.
It's I have one. It's gonna be a cover of an REM album, and then the other one is more like ambient, and they're both like halfway done. But I quit my job, so I'll have the summer to finish them up.
Hell yeah, dude.
So is Game Boy like a maiden name, or is that something you just recently picked?
Yeah, it was deep in my family lineage, and I just picked it out because it sounded cool.
That's cool.
It's a hyphenate. His father's name was Game, and his mother's name was Boy.
It was
Right.
Boy.
You'd think it'd be the other way around, but
No.
Well, no, I mean surnames are surnames, right?
Yeah.
From the Kansas boys.
Yeah. So that's me. I hope that you like it.
Steve Edwards, you are also in a band. Would you like to plug that? It sounds just like Jim Steinman.
Yeah. Don't say that. Because no, not that. I would hate to be a...
You'd hate to lie.
Well, because if anybody ever wanted to actually listen to it, they'd be like, oh my god, it doesn't sound anything like Jim Steinman.
I've listened to 3 of these songs already, and none of them sounded like the single Jim Steinman song I would have listened to at the same
None of them are talking
time.
about boners.
They're like, your longest song is like 3 minutes and 50 seconds. Like,
I mean,
what the...
Smile is kind of about boners.
Yeah, it's true.
It's true. I'm in a band called Eye for None. We're not playing a lot right now, but working on some new music. And I'm also in this incredible new band called The Steves. And
Yes.
Which I am executive producer for, and I came up with the idea. So I just want to tag that on there that I said, you guys should form a band called The Steves with another Steve on drums. So you're welcome, world, for giving them that idea and then pestering them to do it.
So, hey, should we also should we make just our stage name, should it just be Steve everybody, like Steve on guitar, Steve on bass, Steve on drums, or should it be
I think that's what we were saying at the first practice.
I that was the first idea, or do we take Steve as our last name and then we
So
give
we'd all
ourselves
be
a
Steve?
Well, we give ourselves a first name,
Steve
like
Stevens is already
like Johnny Ramone and Joey
If you
Ramone.
can get Steve Stevens to join your band, like you will win.
That would be amazing. So, like, would you be like Smith Steve or Smythe Steve or something?
I think you just got to call everybody Steve
Just
and
Steve, okay.
just keep it with
All right.
that.
Well, that's a new project. Sure to hit the radio waves in
Take the
about
world by storm.
25 probably, and expect
Expect the unexpected.
expect long piano ballads out of that band. It's gonna be strictly piano,
Oh hell yeah!
piano rock, and
What are you gonna do in that band?
I'm gonna play piano.
The
We're
trick
all
is
playing piano.
none of us are actually all that talented
No,
with piano players,
no, but
so
we're
we're
all
all going to take about 2 to 3 fingers worth. I guess 3 to 4 fingers worth each, and between the 3 of us, we'll have about 2 hands worth of competent piano playing.
That's why I said it wasn't gonna come out to 2025 because it's gonna take us a while to figure out how to do it. So we'll have it's just gonna be we're gonna have a record. It's gonna be one long song. It's just gonna be like a Jim Steinman kind of thing. We're gonna have it'll be different songs. But
It
we
would be
won't
like
tell
if
you
Jim
where.
Steinman covered Dope Smoker.
Yeah. So that's it. That's me, and then you can find me Here,
Mike, you want to go ahead and interrupt Steve
sorry.
with your plugs?
It's been I worked all day and this has been a long podcast. What do you want me to do?
What are you talking about? For the listeners, this episode's only been an hour.
Is it? Really? Oh my god.
Multi-parter.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a musician. I don't have my own band to plug, but I love music. I love promoting it, especially stuff maybe a lot of people haven't heard of. There's a band from the late 70s and early 80s that released a few albums called X. A little more straightforward, a little more rockin' than Jim Steinman, but I can definitely
They
see...
throw a rock and roll party in the streets.
Yeah, that's the one most people would know if they know it. And I can see there being some overlap and enjoyment for anyone who was interested in this podcast. So they have a new album coming out in June. They've been marketing it as their final album. So anyone interested in new music from some classic artists, especially stuff you maybe never heard, check it out in June.
Did you say Axe?
Yes, Axe.
A-X-E.
Okay.
Shoot, I'm interested in that. I like that band.
I know you like Axe, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a couple of their records on vinyl. So
Yeah,
cool
their most famous album is called Offering, so this final album is literally called Final Offering.
Nice, just like a Rambo Last Blood.
Yes, yeah.
Excellent.
I got this other new band for you to check out, Mike. It's called the Steves. And
Steves, okay, yeah. Now, are they 70s or more 80s? Or when
they're 20,
Steve,
30s.
why are you dragging out this ending?
I don't know.
Greg, where can they find us online?
They can find us at lipstickgeneration.com and on most social media platforms as Lipstick Generation, except on Twitter, where we're called Mr. Cool Rock and Roll. All right, well, that's our episode. Bye.
Thank you, Bob.